Well, it's official. Roger and I have cabin fever. It's already spring officially, but it's 32 degrees. There's still snow on the ground. We've had all these storms in March. So Roger and I are going to escape. We're going to go to a couple of maple sugar farms because it is maple sugar season. The sap is running, and we're going to have some fun with that. So come along with us. Okay, we're at the Parker House Farm. We finally got a table. It took an hour and a half, but it looks like it's completely worth it. What are you having, Roger?
Eggs, sausage, home fries, French toast.
Yummy, that looks so good. And there's the real fresh maple syrup that they make here. here today with Fred and Janice Lake, and they have a maple farm in Lunenburg, Massachusetts. And we met them once at the Marshfield Fair because he was selling the most awesome maple cotton candy you've ever had in your life. I'm addicted to it. So thanks for being with us today, Fred.
Thank you.
And Janice.
Thank you.
And it's the middle of maple sugar season, and we came up here today to see the operation. You're not boiling today, but you've been collecting.
Correct. I just brought in 300 gallons of sap, and tomorrow we're going to be open during boiling.
Yeah. So how did you get into this whole business?
I got into this probably I was in high school, and I was working for a gentleman named Bill Fairchild and his father, his name is George, and they do it we used to put out 14,000 bucket and lids with Clydesdales up on the farm.
Wow. When you were a kid.
When I was a kid. So I did it for a long time until I joined the military.
Yeah. And I read that you joined the military to get away from the farm.
To get away from farming, and I wanted to be a heavy equipment operator.
And here you are.
I met my wife, and now I'm back into maple syrup because she came up with this great idea and said, Fred, why don't we expand a little bit? Because when I started this, I was just showing the kids in a turkey fryer. And then when she said, let's expand, this is what we ended up doing. I ended up building a sugar house, and now we have a reverse osmosis machine. And now we put out about 1,100 taps. And I hope to get to about 2,000.
That's awesome. And so what products do you sell from the maple syrup?
We sell maple roasted peanuts, maple roasted pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds, the maple candies, maple lollipops, maple syrup, maple cotton candy, which you were a fan of.
Yes.
And I just recently bought a kettle corn machine to make maple kettle corn. That's starting this year.
I can't wait to try that. That sounds so good.
I'm excited. I can't wait to go back to Marshfield to see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see you. Actually, I might be in Ohio during the fair this year, so maybe not. But so how do you sell your product?
A lot of word of mouth, and I do the farmers markets. I do Fitchburg, Lunenburg, Harvard farmers markets, and then I do a small Stillman's Fair. I do Bolton Fair. I do Marshfield Fair. And then I just recently did the paperwork, and I had to go in front of a board and show photos, and I got accepted. So this year, for the first time, I'm headed to the New Jersey State Fair at the Meadowlands.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Do you sell any online?
I do, on our Facebook page. When people send my wife a note, she'll let me know, and she takes care of all that.
Oh, so very informal.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. So from what I've seen about maple sugar producing, it's a laborious process. A lot of it is by hand. And I can't imagine that it's a really hugely profitable business.
You gotta love what you do,
Yeah.
because we spend a lot of time on snowshoes, going from bucket to bucket, using 2 5-gallon buckets to gather the buckets and bring them back to the tanks. I do have some on pipeline. I've got, out of the 1,100 I have now, I have not quite 300 buckets out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's labor
Labor
intense.
of love, yeah.
Yes.
And everyone I've met so far in the maple sugar industry has a full-time job, and they do this as a hobby.
That is
the case
correct.
with you, right?
That is.
And what is your full-time job?
I'm a full-time police officer for the city of Fitchburg.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, because that's not an easy job either.
Keeps me busy.
So, and I recently heard that maple syrup actually has some medicinal properties. Do you know anything about?
I know that you get all the, I used to have a poster, I lost it, and I'm gonna find another one. But you end up getting all the minerals, magnesium, zinc, everything that the tree offers in the ground comes through maple syrup. Mm-hmm. And there was a study out, I read it in the Maple News, where the University of Vermont did a study, and actually the state of Vermont, for people with low sugar, they'll give them a straight shot of maple syrup to bring it back, and it seems they bring them back quicker than whatever they were giving them before to get their sugar back up.
Wow, okay. And it's a more natural, it's better for you than white granulated sugar.
Absolutely. Again, like I said, I had a poster that compared white sugar, brown sugar, and maple syrup blew it away with the comparisons.
It's all
That's-
natural.
Correct.
That's excellent. I'm a big fan of maple syrup. I always have been. I won't buy the other fake stuff that's
The
made.
corn syrup.
Yes, exactly. The brown corn syrup.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know, but you have to read your labels because they'll put
do.
Vermont made or, and it's very like maybe 1% real maple syrup in those
Yeah.
products, but they think they're getting real syrup and it's not.
Yeah,
It's very misleading.
yeah. That's not nice, but that's a lot of the food industry. So you have this little operation here, and you're busy. What, 3 months of the year? When does the season start usually?
This year I happened to start January 9th.
Oh, okay.
Last year I started January 24th. And I'm thinking we probably have this week coming. Probably this week coming to be our last big run because it seems like the weather's going to be warm and it's not going to be freezing. Ideally, you would love to see that 40 degrees during the day and below freezing at night. That works out perfect. But this tank of 300 gallons I brought in, it still looks pretty clear. And again, another sign Mother Nature gives you is you'll start to see your sap turn like a milk color, or you'll start seeing strings in it and stuff.
Okay.
Then you know it's coming very close. And then also you'll watch the trees when the buds start popping out. Then you start pulling your spouts and everything. Then you're all done. It makes your what they call buddy syrup. It tastes real bitter.
So why does it have to be freezing at night and above 40 during the day?
Makes the sap run. That's when the
Okay.
tree starts calling to get its food up toward the leaves, because that's what it's doing early in the spring. It's calling to get all the food up to get the leaves out.
Okay, that makes sense. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and telling us about making maple syrup. And you do a great job here. Again, I love your products, and also thank you for your service as a policeman. Thank you for your service as a nurse.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
That comes in. The sap I brought in on the truck, I normally put in that stainless steel tank there. I have a machine in this room. It's heated and everything. It's a RO, which is a reverse osmosis. What it basically does is it will take that sap. Sap normally runs about 2%. It's been going about 2% this year. Sometimes you get 2.5%. Sometimes you get 1.75% sweetness coming right out of the tree. So I fill my tank, 750 gallons. I run it through the RO, reverse osmosis. That takes water and sugar molecules. Sugar goes this way, pure water goes out this way. Those white tanks out there, that one tank's almost got 600 gallons of water. So when I start with 750 gallons of sap, I run it through here and I set my pressures. They've determined that anywhere from 8 to 10% sweetness is what you want to boil at. So I set my pressures at 10. I'll flip the switch. I'll get rid of 500 gallons of water, and I'll get in this back tank where this hose is connected, 250 gallons of 10% sweetness. So how do you determine how many gallons of syrup to a gallon of, or how many gallons of sap to a gallon of syrup? They use a standard rule, Vermont Rule 86. 2% into 86 is 43. So that's 43 gallons of sap to a gallon of syrup. With 10%, 10 into 86 is 8.6 to a gallon of syrup. So that's where it shows your value of that machine in there. Saves time in here for firing costs, my time in here. That 750 gallons would normally take me 3 days with this size evaporator to boil. Now I can do it in a half a day, making the same amount of syrup and stuff. So when I put that 10% in the back, it comes in on this line. I mark it. These slide up and down. I mark my top so I know how full the tank is at the start of my day. I use my second one. I'll time it for about an hour. I'll set a timer. So when it dings, then I'll measure how far I've got down. My own calculations, I can figure out how long I'm going to be spending in the sugar house until I get everything boiled through. My bottom mark here, I figured out this is my last fire. So when my sap level comes down to this line, that's the last time I put a fire in that evaporator. So by the time this cools down and settles down, I do not burn or scorch any of my pans or burn the rig. And then everything works out just perfect. If it was running now, I could show you. This is what we call a float. If you just take a peek in here, I can show you that the sap comes in, it floats right here on this. And as the steam is coming off here boiling and going out, this is feeding as much steam as leaving off the rig. So it keeps the levels proper. It will come in right here, in on this side. I'll remove this a little bit so you can look. So it will come in on this side, it will flow down this end, cross over, flow back up to that other corner over there. And this back pan has a bunch, you could probably see them. Yeah, those are all flues there. So the old days, see all the flues cut down through the middle of the sap?
Yeah.
The old days, it used to be a flat pan across the back. So somebody figured out they needed more to create more of a heating surface. Instead of having a flat surface across, they bent it up, over, down, made a bunch of flues. So when you fire in the front, all the flames suck down them flues and you get more of a boiling to get it going faster. Correct. So when it gets into that corner, if you walk to the other side of the rig, this is my second float. This float's controlled by my two front pans. I have this set so I run about 1.5 inches of syrup or sap in the front. So again, as the steam's coming off, that one's open, this one's open, and it keeps everything circulating. So it comes down in this pipe, in, over, comes back out, back in, and back over to this side. So by the time it gets over here, it should be syrup. So I check my syrup 3 different ways. My first way is I have these 2 round gauges. You see the first number is 0. That's boiling water. So before I set them in, I boil water, set my gauge to 0 so I know that's boiling. Syrup is made 7 degrees hotter than water. So the 7 is syrup. So when that gauge, before I bought this, I used it here. So when that got to 7, I knew I had syrup there. I had to start drawing it off. After I draw it off, I would check it with a syrup hydrometer. And my syrup hydrometer right here. On my syrup hydrometer, I have a hot check, which is the top red line, and a cold check. So when I bring it off out of here, I use one of my little cups. I'll set it and float it. If it's a little high, that means there's still too much water above the red line. Throw it back in, and I can adjust with my automatic draw off with the temperature, whatever it's reading. If I gotta crank it up a little bit more, then I do, till I get it hit perfect on that red line. If it's down below it, that means I've taken too much water out of it. Great thing about maple syrup, if I take too much water out of it, all I have to do is open up my thing and draw in more syrup, which has got more water in it, float it till I hit that line. Perfect. So when I get that figured out and done, I'll take my syrup and I'll put it on my chair, and in here is what we call a filter aid. And I add this to my syrup, and this collects.
I'll take it. I moved it.
This collects on my filter press. These papers across here. So what this is, and this is what this is a filter. Don't ask me to pronounce. Han, how do you pronounce it?
Did it make you, sir?
There you go. He got it. So I put that in, and that's what clings to the papers and takes any impurities out of the syrup. Any little like dust or anything cuts through. I filter twice. I go through my filter press, and then in my canning, in the top, I have another piece of filter paper across the top. So it'll go through this filter press, drains in on the top, and drains through a second filtering. And then I can show you, this is what This is what collects on the filter papers. So you have your filter aid, which collects up, like you see it stuck on the papers, and then the black is anything from the syrup that cleans it up. The old ways we used to do it back home is when it came off the rig, you would do your check with a syrup hydrometer, and as soon as you got it out and it was hot, they had felts. They looked like cones, and we used to have a 3-coner. So you take your bucket of syrup, throw it through the felt, and you could hear it drizzle down into the pan. Once it's done, you pull your felt out, turn it inside out, have a bucket of hot water, rinse it, and then you had one of those old cranks that you would run it through to squeeze it to dry it off. And then you'd have your finished syrup product. And then we'd put it in barrels and bring them down out of the woods with the horses.
So what's in there? It's a maple sugar and what else?
Cane sugar, that's it.
And you have to combine them because the maple sugar alone is too much?
Correct.
And there you have
Cotton candy and a jar.
And it'll last 2
Maple
months in the
cotton
plastic
candy.
container. If you
Oh,
keep the
really?
lid on it, throw it in the fridge. Maple syrup does not freeze.
Oh, because of the high sugar content.